Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After you through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans questions. It's almost too much to talk about on today's show. I don't really know where to start. I guess we'll start with the simple stuff. We're obviously going to break down the 53-man roster, which was some interesting decisions that I think they made. We're obviously going to talk about some of the other things that happened, but we'll start here. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel agree on an extension. According to ESPN's Jeff Darlington, it's a 2-year extension. The third-year head coach agreed to a deal that will tie him to the Dolphins through the 2028 season. I don't know how much they had it on. I think he initially signed a 4-year deal. This comes after the Dolphins booked consecutive postseason appearances for the first time in more than 20 years. McDaniel, 41, has rejuvenated Miami's offense. The team led the league in total offense for the first time since Dan Marino was when he was 33 years old in 1994. Don't know why they put that in the article. And Tua has shown substantial growth since the Dolphins hired the Kyle Shanahan disciple. I don't think there's anybody that would argue that everything that he's done is obvious. Completely remade the culture of the team. I feel like we're looked at as it feels that we're a higher organization than we were before. And honestly, I think Brian, as bad as he was as a leader with certain people, or just in general, I guess you could say, that was I felt like there was a little bit of a shift there. It was at least better. The culture felt better than Philbin or Gase, than those coaches. I'm forgetting someone else in the middle there. We've had so many dang interim head coaches. But I think Mike has completely remade the team, and it is a different feeling than the previous regimes. Because he has a very unique scheme. He's innovated a lot of things in football in general. If you just look around, even college, and it's really fun to see some other teams run the plays that we made famous, especially like the play action pistol motion thing that we do all the time, or the RPO wheel, stuff like that. He came up with. So he's really smart. He knows football. He seems like a great players coach. He's created a phenomenal culture. That is sustainable, because not only is his scheme good, which I think he's a part of a great culture, the players love him, and the organization is ran at a much higher level than it had been under some of the other head coaches. That's for sure. All the other head coaches had like major flaws. Gase was a weirdo. Kind of got the job because he knew Peyton Manning. That's the reason. Wasn't a really smart football coach at all. Philbin was a terrible leader. A good coach, but a terrible leader. And from an old school, different time, he didn't really have his own scheme either. Wasn't really innovative when it came to that. If you think about all the great head coaches in the history of the league, they all innovated in some way. And most of them started off pretty young, which is funny to think about. And he has all of those things. So it's nice that we found one, and we found a great head coach. He checks all the boxes of a great head coach. And to just bring this up, I remember when he was hired, I hated it. I think everybody did. He was just such a weird. It's like this guy is just so much different than everybody else, and ended up working in his favor for many different reasons. He's also just a good dude. He's a good man. It seems like he's definitely better than the last two coaches we had. That's for sure. This next one's quick. I guess we'll throw a bunch of different things in here. But there's obviously a crisis at the receiver position right now. We'll start here. Wide receiver Robbie Chosen Anderson has joined the Dolphins practice squad. This comes from Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. River Craycraft he's going to miss the first 4 games. Same thing with Odell Beckham. The Dolphins reportedly knew this, according to every beat writer on the planet. I'm sure you guys have already read that. Before they signed him, the Dolphins knew he was going to miss the first 4 games, which makes sense of why. And I don't know why they didn't just say that, because it's like, I don't know. I feel like they should have just said that in the beginning, and our expectations would have been much lower than just dragging the fan base along for months on end and not explaining why. But so that was kind of stupid. But other than that, and I would still would have signed him even if he was like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna be here the first 4 games. Like, I don't care. He's such a talented player. The downside of that, and I guess the reason you might not do it, is because of the practice time. It's kind of going to be a problem, I would assume. The fact that he hasn't even thrown to Odell is kind of crazy, and we've already talked about that before, but that's the most disappointing thing, is like, how ready is he going to be with the team? And I'm sure he seems to have ingratiated himself within the organization pretty well. Everybody talks about him, so it's not like he's not in the building working. So that's a good thing. So what else? Yeah, and Craycraft is another one that kind of sucks. He just can't stay healthy, which is weird. It's not weird, but it's unfortunate. He looked really good in the preseason, and I think maybe he got hurt in that game, actually, that he caught the touchdown. So he's going to miss the first 4 games. So obviously the Dolphins are going to have to depend on Malik Washington. I think he's definitely, I think he was listed as the 3rd receiver on the depth chart, which I thought was pretty impressive, considering the first game that he played in the preseason didn't do a whole lot. Kind of looked a little weird, or not weird, I don't know why I keep saying weird. It looked disappointing, especially with his speed. He didn't look as fast as I thought. And then the last game, I was like, okay, never mind. Maybe he was just nervous and getting used to the game. Because then in that game, it's like, yeah, all of that stuff showed up. And just everything that we saw from Virginia. So he looks like the player. At least in that last game, he looked really good. So I'm excited. I'm even more excited now that he's going to get a lot of playing time. And hopefully he can live up to those expectations. Let's see what else. And obviously Berrios is still here as well. He's been just disappointing through and through. So I'm not going to expect too much from him. The good news is about this receiver situation, though, is A-Chain has been taking a ton of reps as a receiver. And that's a good thing for the Dolphins, because he can kind of cover that stuff up. We've struggled with that 3rd receiving option since Mike McDaniel's been here. There hasn't been a consistent 3rd receiving option. The Dolphins added Jonnu Smith. Even though Odell's hurt, they drafted Malik Washington. And who else? I was going to mention Malik Washington, Jonnu Smith, and then obviously A-Chain, who's going to play more receiver this year. So I don't think it's that going to be as impactful as years past was, and how we dealt with injuries last year, and there was just no depth there. Even though Robbie Anderson's on the practice squad, he was terrible last year. Like, yeah, he caught a touchdown against the Denver Broncos. Who cares? He did not look good last year. There's a reason the Dolphins are just in, a bad spot. Strange. Eric has become a whole nother conundrum that doesn't make a ton of sense. He looked great in preseason. Then he gets hurt immediately. Then the Dolphins waive him. Then they add him back to the practice squad. And it's like, what is going on? I know that he's injured, but at some point, like, he's looked good in every preseason, and then he gets hurt. And then he seems to have had, especially last year and even a little bit this year, packages in the run game. So I'm interested if he's banged up, so that's another unfortunate, thing to throw in there. But I'm pretty confident. That all being said, it's, I'm pretty confident in the depth there, and how they have better options this year than they did a year ago to cover up that 3rd option. I don't know what else to. Didn't mean that. I'm trying to think of if there's anything else. We talked about Odell, so I want to get into the 53-man roster. And yeah, so I guess we'll get into it. So these are the Dolphins players that There was a few of them, but not all of them I was disappointed in. Thank God they re-signed Eric Azukama and Nick Needham to the practice squad, in case you guys didn't know that, which I'm sure you guys did. Because it was Nick, no less so, but Eric, I thought it would have been. I just was like, why not keep him? We've developed him for this many years. It seemed like if he can just get on the field, I think it's gonna pay off. So I'm glad that we got him back. That would have been devastating to lose him, because I still think he's a talented player. He just needs to get on the field. The one that sticks out to me that's the most disappointing is Curtis Bolton, who the Giants immediately signed. At the very least, I think he should have made it as a special teams player. At the very least. I don't know why he didn't make the team. I thought he had a really good preseason. I thought he looked really good throughout. And he's been a special teams player his entire career in the league. It's not like he doesn't know how to do it. And I thought he looked good at linebacker. Obviously, they have a lot of linebackers on this roster. They made a concerted effort to even add depth with players like Anthony Walker. They still have Duke Riley. So I guess, I've seen Duke Riley just be terrible for 2 years. So I would rather have, let's just see what Curtis Bolton can do. I would have rather have seen that as depth. But, I don't know. I don't know why they got rid of him. I thought at least he should have made special teams. Ethan Bonner, I thought, was a big W. Storm Duck, a big W that they made the team. I know that reportedly a lot of teams tried to trade for Ethan, which is interesting. So yeah, that's a big dub. They played really good in preseason. So the cornerback room looks a lot better. Cam Smith being injured is rough. Obviously, he's still on the team. I would say Neville Gallimore, the defensive tackle we got from Dallas. If you didn't watch preseason, that might surprise some people. But if you watch preseason, what's his name? Peely? I always want to call him Pill for some reason. But Peely, he just dominated. He looked really good. So, and I'm sure he looked good in practices or he wouldn't have made the team. So that didn't make that made more sense to me than someone like a Curtis Bolton. But I'm trying to think if there's any. Chris Brooks, I know a lot of people are upset about that, but that does. Guys, can we just be honest right now? He's not only is he injured again, but they have three great players, and maybe I guess the argument would be like, who cares about Jeff Wilson, which I completely agree with. But so yeah, I guess you could put Chris in there. Chris is Chris, I know, is a fan favorite, and he's done nothing but great. Every time he touches the field, he makes a big play. And he's definitely more talented than Jeff. It's not even close. So, yeah, that was kind of disappointing. Is he still... I want to say... I think he's still released. I don't think the Dolphins have got him back in any way. And I don't know what his injury was. I'll make sure I'm pretty sure that they didn't sign him back to the practice squad. So yeah, that was disappointing. But it made sense. It wasn't like it was like, why did they do this? It wasn't, crazy or anything like that. Crazy that Ethan got that many trade offers. And it's funny, it's like, what do you think we're going to do? Just give him he's a corner. He's a young corner. I just thought that was funny. Like, no way we would trade him. But that's good for the Dolphins. It's good news. He looked really good in preseason. Fun and he's got great instincts too. And he's a great tackler. And they play a lot of press, like cover one, to see and they tested him and he passed the test. I'm trying to think, is there anything else the 53-man roster that I want to talk about? There was nothing else, like, corners-wise. It was nice to see Patrick McMorris make the team. I feel like that's kind of... He looked really good. He seems like he's going to be a nice developmental player for a while now. He really fits Fits well in this defense as well. It sucks he got hurt. I mean, he started the season on IR, but I felt like that was a really good development that happened. I don't know, the hidden gem, whatever the heck you want to call it, in the NFL or during preseason. Jack Driscoll, yeah, like some of these other guys is like, yeah, I mean, doesn't really surprise me that much. Watching him play, I was like, he doesn't have the athleticism playing this dang system. But other than that, I like the 53-man roster. The tight end position is glaring. Like, oh my god, it's just way better. I think that's probably the most improved positional group is the tight end position. It's not even close. And I even think Julian Hill, who actually looks good as a player, he's hopefully, I mean, I don't know what his ceiling is, but at least he's improving. So the tight end room is much improved. I think the corner room is much improved, like comparing it to past depth charts. I think that's a lot better. The safeties are way better than yet last year. Deshaun Elliott was an awful, just decision by the team, I think. Excuse me. Didn't even fit Vic Fangio's system at all. He was awful. He was one of the worst. He was just not a good player. So that's much better looking at it. I think the defensive line is really good. I think it's actually better than that. Well, other than, I would say, Christian Wilkins. That's obviously not as good, the interior. But as a whole, I think there's more depth there. I don't think that's debatable. Other than, Van Ginkel, but then you add, but then you add two players like Chop and Mo. It's like, okay, I mean, that's pretty good. And Peely, Calais Campbell. So I think the defensive line's pretty good, if not the same, a little bit better. Trying to think of positional groups that aren't as good. Probably guard, I would say. Guard's probably better. Guard last year was better than this year. There's a lot of question marks. So the interior offensive line definitely needs to prove itself. It's not as good as it was a year ago, which is kind of sad. I think the tackle position is better than it was a year ago. That's not even close. With the additions of Patrick Paul, keeping Kendall Lamb, I think was a big deal. Quarterback room is the same. Receivers, when I would say better, it's not even close than last year. But they're all getting their knees knocked out, so that's unfortunate. But I still think that room is better. So I think this team is actually better than it was last year. I think middle linebacker is better, especially depth-wise. Adding Anthony Walker, that's a big deal. He's a good player, and he's probably going to play a lot because David Long gets hurt. Jordan Brooks, he's coming off injury. I think he's coming off an injury, but I know his injury history is actually pretty good. So that room, I think, is better. Yeah, I think this team is just better in every way. Other than guard. I think guard, it's worse. And the interior D-line, I think we've seen enough. It's like, okay, yeah, I don't think this is going to be a problem, especially with Calais Campbell and Zach Sealer still being on the team. Like, it's not bad, that's for sure. It's like even, I would say. Even though I think the depth in the interior is better than it was a year ago, for sure. So yeah, the team's better when you break it down like that. It's definitely a better team. So we'll talk a little bit about with the 53-man, I like it, especially with some of the young players that know, they do these lists where it's like, oh, the Dolphins are one of the oldest players in the oldest teams in the league. And there's a little bit, and if you watch the games, we have a lot of really good young guys that are can be good for in the future for a long time, especially our front seven. There's a lot of positions that we're young at that are important, that we're going to be good there for a while. So I'm not worried about that at all. I think there's a really nice mix of veterans and young players, and there's a lot of really nice developmental players too. So yeah, I'm excited about that for sure. So previewing week 1, which is crazy. Obviously, it's in Miami. It's versus Jacksonville. When I think about this game, I think about I just think about the front on both sides. Like, I think that the Jags play a lot of zone coverage, which is weird because I was like, it's kind of weird. Because of their team, you would think they would play a little bit more man coverage. They don't have a lot of players in their secondary. They do have a good corner in Tyson Campbell. He's a really good player. But I think because they play a lot of zone, and Tua is a really good pocket passer, so that's a good matchup for Tua. But it's going to come down, can we pass protect? That's really that's the only way we would not move the ball against the Jags. Is like, if we can't block, and then yeah, not going to be a great day offensively. It never will be if you can't block. But yeah, that would be the only problem I would see. Is like, okay, if they're playing zone and we just really are terrible at pass protecting, which we shouldn't be because we have two really good tackles. So they have Josh Allen, obviously. They added Eric Armstead in the middle of that defense. So it's going to be interesting to see how we match up with them. I think pretty much for almost every game, that's going to be the matchup that it's like, okay, can we win that matchup? So that's I think the key to the game on offense, just pass protection. That's really it. Give Tua time, he's gonna rip we're gonna rip the zone apart. Tua's been in the league long enough. You can't really sit in zone against us, and you can't play man against us either. It just comes down to, a really talented team. Can we protect Tua? Defensively against the Jags, they have a lot of really young players that are really good. At least we think they will be. Brian Thomas, obviously, they lost Calvin Ridley, which was a big L for them. They have some other nice young receivers that nobody really knows about. I think they did lose Zay Jones. I can't remember where he went. I know he got suspended for PEDs. So I would say a matchup to worry about. The Jags kind of, they lost some offensive linemen, but they drafted some players. I would say the front, I think the defensive line getting pressure is going to be interesting. That, and I'm excited to see how our corners match up with their receivers. And I'm excited to see, because there's really nothing I can say, because defensively, we don't really know, what is it, I would assume we're going to be more aggressive. Are we going to run a lot of man coverage behind it, or are we going to do zone? And I know this defense is really multiple. I love how big, Anthony's fronts are. So to make it hard to run the football, I think he puts a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks. At least this is just based off of the Baltimore defense. What the Baltimore defense does, I'm assuming is what we're gonna do. It does make things difficult for the quarterback. You're gonna have to be accurate, but it all comes can we get after the quarterback with all the injuries? How is Jalen Phillips gonna look? So yeah, and I think coverage is gonna be, because maybe we do blitz more. But I think the defense side is just a huge question mark. We can speculate all day, but we'd have to see it first and what the scheme looks like and stuff. But we know what the offense is. I think we match up really well with the Jags offensively. It just comes down to just execute pass protection, and then we should be just fine. So yeah, that's really all. I'm excited to see the running backs. There's just so many great offensive skill position players that it's so many of them. The backfield alone is insane. And then you add Jonnu Smith and Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. It's it's crazy. So the people will be open. We just have to block. But I could not be more excited for the season. It's nice that, week 1 in Miami, which is fun. I can't remember week 1. Oh yeah, we went to LA. I'm pretty sure even, man, this is going way back. I want to say Mike's first game as our head coach. What was Mike's first game? I want to say that was on the road. I'm drawing in massive, because I know we started 3-0 that year. Who did we play week 1, dude? Maybe no. Oh yeah. It was the Patriots week 1 at home. So yeah, last year we were on the road. This year we're at home. And then Mike's first year was at. This who cares? This information doesn't matter, but to me it mattered. I had to remember. Yeah, I'm excited. I think everybody's excited. Team's better. Tua's a year better. I'm excited to see how Tua. I mean, I'm excited to see. I think Tua's gonna have a career year, and I'm excited to see how high the ceiling is when it comes to that. So yeah, excited for Anthony Weaver. He completely changed the vibe and culture of that defense. So I'm excited about that too. And we don't have feuds within the organization between our head coaches. It seems like these two are made to coach together, which is great. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Love the team. Love everything about it. Can't wait. I'll see you guys in the next one.